5. Bermuda Triangle myths. Debunked. It's one of the most mysterious places on Earth. A region where ships vanish without a trace, planes disappear from radar, and compasses go haywire. The Bermuda Triangle has fascinated and terrified people for decades. But how much of what we've heard is true? Today, we're diving into 5 of the most famous mysteries linked to the Bermuda Triangle and exposing the surprising truths behind them. The Bermuda Triangle, a region so infamous it has become synonymous with vanishing ships, disappearing aircraft, and unsolved mysteries. But behind the dramatic headlines and sensational stories, what does science actually say? In this series, we will explore 5 of the most famous mysteries linked to the Bermuda Triangle, and then reveal the truth behind each one. Let's begin with perhaps the most iconic of them all, the vanishing of Flight 19. On December 5, 1945, 5 U.S. Navy bombers known as Flight 19 took off from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for a routine training mission. They were flying Avenger torpedo bombers, sturdy, well-tested aircraft. The flight plan was simple: head east into the Atlantic, turn north for a while, and then head back west to base. But the planes never returned. All 14 crew members vanished, along with the 13 men sent out to search for them on a rescue plane, which also disappeared without a trace. This event quickly became the cornerstone of the Bermuda Triangle legend. What could have made 6 aircraft and 27 men vanish into thin air? The story that evolved around Flight 19 was dramatic. Radio transmissions from the pilots suggested they were disoriented. One pilot reportedly said, "Everything looks strange, even the ocean." And another, "We are entering white water, nothing seems right." These cryptic messages fueled speculation. Was it a magnetic anomaly? A vortex? A portal to another dimension? Books, documentaries, and tabloid articles began referring to the region as a supernatural hotspot. Flight 19 became the poster child for Bermuda Triangle hysteria. But let's break it down with facts. First, weather conditions that day were not ideal. There were scattered storms and rough seas. Second, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, the commanding officer of the flight, was reportedly known for getting lost and had a history of navigation errors. On that day, Taylor became convinced that his compasses were malfunctioning. He believed they were over the Florida Keys, when in fact they were much farther northeast. He kept guiding the squadron in the wrong direction, deeper into the Atlantic. The Navy's official investigation initially blamed human error, but later changed the report to cause unknown, largely to avoid embarrassment and to honor the lost crew. Still, modern analyses and declassified documents support the original assessment. Taylor got lost, panicked, and led the squadron away from land. Eventually, they likely ran out of fuel and ditched in the ocean. As for the rescue plane, a Martin Mariner, it exploded in mid-air shortly after takeoff. Witnesses saw a fireball in the sky. These aircraft had a notorious reputation. They were nicknamed flying gas tanks because of their tendency to catch fire due to fuel vapor buildup. The disappearance of the rescue plane had nothing to do with the Triangle. It was a tragic but mechanical failure. So what really happened with Flight 19? Most likely, a disoriented commander, malfunctioning instruments, or at least perceived malfunctions, worsening weather, and a critical navigation error. Combine that with an aircraft running low on fuel over a vast hostile ocean, and the disappearance becomes far less mysterious and far more tragic. It was not aliens, not a time warp, not a rift in space-time, just a series of human and environmental failures that ended in catastrophe. The myth, however, persisted. It was too compelling. The idea of 5 planes and their crews vanishing into thin air is the stuff of nightmares and bestsellers. But science and history paint a much clearer picture. There was no supernatural force at work, only the cruel indifference of the sea and the tragic consequences of human error. Flight 19 remains a symbol, not of the paranormal, but of how legends are born. One incident, magnified by speculation, can evolve into myth when stripped from its context. And in the Bermuda Triangle, Flight 19 is just the beginning. Next, we'll investigate another classic tale, the disappearance of the USS Cyclops, a massive ship that vanished without a single distress call. What really happened to the largest non-combat loss in US Navy history? Stay tuned. Mystery 2. The Ghost Ship of the Triangle. It's one of the most haunting legends of the Bermuda Triangle. Ships found adrift, their crew missing without a trace. Perhaps the most infamous of these is the story of the Mary Celeste, a brigantine discovered in 1872 near the Azores, completely intact, cargo untouched, but with no soul aboard. Although the Mary Celeste was technically outside the Bermuda Triangle, it has often been linked to the mythos due to the eeriness of its story. But there are other vessels that feed directly into the Triangle's mystery: the Ellen Austin, the Carol A. Deering, and the Rosalie, each associated with the region and each found mysteriously abandoned. The story of the Ellen Austin is particularly chilling. In 1881, this American ship encountered an unknown derelict drifting in the Sargasso Sea, within the area often associated with the Bermuda Triangle. The crew of the Ellen Austin boarded the empty vessel and, finding it seaworthy, decided to bring it back to port. But shortly after the ships parted, a storm separated them. When the Ellen Austin caught up again, the derelict was adrift once more, and the prize crew was gone. A second attempt was made. Another crew was placed aboard. Once again, the two ships became separated, and once again, the derelict was found with no one aboard. The story ends there. No explanation, no bodies, just the vast silence of the sea. Accounts like this seem to suggest supernatural forces, or at the very least, a pattern of inexplicable disappearances that hint at something deeply wrong in this part of the world. But is there a rational explanation? Let's dig deeper. First, we need to examine the conditions of the region. The Bermuda Triangle, stretching from Miami to Bermuda to Puerto Rico, is notorious for its unpredictable weather, complex currents, and sudden storms. Rogue waves, giant, unexpected walls of water, have been documented throughout the Atlantic, especially in areas with high energy like the Triangle. These waves can reach up to 100 feet and strike without warning. A ship caught in one of these could be capsized or flooded in seconds. Additionally, the region contains the Sargasso Sea, a vast area of calm water surrounded by strong ocean currents. Ships drifting into this area during the age of sail could easily become stuck for days or weeks if winds failed, making them vulnerable to desertion or other complications. In the days before reliable engines, a becalmed ship was a serious problem, especially if food or water supplies ran low or if the crew believed they were lost. But there's also the problem of myth-building. Many of the stories about ghost ships in the Bermuda Triangle rely on second-hand accounts or unverified retellings. The Ellen Austin incident, for example, appears in popular literature, but no official logbooks or first-hand documents confirm the entire narrative. It may have originated from a blend of separate events, exaggerated over time for dramatic effect. The lack of primary sources casts doubt on whether the story occurred as popularly told, or even at all. Moreover, the psychology of maritime mystery cannot be overlooked. Stories of abandoned ships capture the imagination in a way few other tales do. A vessel, intact but lifeless, evokes immediate questions. What happened? Where did they go? Why no sign of struggle? This narrative gap invites supernatural explanations, but in reality, there are mundane reasons why crews abandon ships: leaks, fires, disease outbreaks, or simple misjudgments. In rough seas or during storms, panic can spread rapidly. An experienced crew might decide to abandon ship if they believe it's taking on water or is about to be lost, only for the vessel to remain afloat after all. We must also consider the human desire for patterns. Once the Bermuda Triangle became a thing in the public mind during the mid-20th century, Thanks to authors like Vincent Gaddis and Charles Berlitz, every maritime mystery in the region was retroactively attributed to it. The triangle became a catch-all explanation for any strange or unfortunate event at sea. In this context, stories like that of the Ellen Austin gained traction not because of their frequency or verifiability, but because they reinforce an existing myth. Yet, despite all this debunking, the ghost ship remains a powerful image. It's not just about boats, it's about disappearance, about losing contact with what we consider safe and rational. It evokes the deepest fear of the ocean, not drowning but being erased. No wreckage, no distress signal, just gone. In the end, the tale of the ghost ship in the Bermuda Triangle is likely a cocktail of natural danger, historical coincidence, and human imagination. But it persists because we want it to, because there is something about the unknown that never stops calling to us. As we move on to the next mystery, keep this in mind. The most chilling stories aren't always true, but they are often the ones we remember. And in the vast, uncharted waters of our world, sometimes myth fills the space where explanation runs dry. On December 5, 1945, 5 U.S. Navy torpedo bombers, collectively known as Flight 19, took off from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for a routine training mission. What followed is one of the most iconic and haunting disappearances associated with the Bermuda Triangle. The planes never returned. A rescue aircraft sent after them also vanished. 6 aircraft, 27 men, gone without a trace. The incident gave birth to countless theories: alien abduction, time warps, magnetic anomalies. But what really happened? To understand the mystery, we have to start with the facts. Flight 19 consisted of 5 TBM Avenger bombers, piloted by experienced servicemen, led by Lieutenant Charles Taylor. The mission was straightforward: a 3-leg navigation exercise over the Bahamas and then back to base. Weather conditions were reported as normal, but about 90 minutes after takeoff, radio transmissions began to reveal that something was wrong. Taylor reported being disoriented, unable to recognize landmarks, and believed his compass was malfunctioning. He thought he was over the Florida Keys, farther west than he actually was. Other pilots in the group reportedly disagreed, but followed his lead. As confusion mounted, the squadron drifted further out to sea, burning fuel. Radio contact was eventually lost. Later that evening, a PBM Mariner rescue plane was dispatched to search for the missing aircraft. Within 20 minutes of takeoff, it too vanished from radar. A tanker ship in the area reported seeing an explosion in the sky. The Navy concluded the Mariner likely exploded mid-air due to a fuel leak, a known issue with that model. So what caused Flight 19's disappearance? The Navy's original investigation blamed pilot error and disorientation, but under pressure from Taylor's family, the official report was amended to cause unknown. This ambiguity fueled speculation. Books and documentaries portrayed the incident as proof of the supernatural nature of the Bermuda Triangle. However, modern analysis offers a far more grounded explanation. First, let's address Taylor's confusion. He had a history of getting lost in previous flights and had even been grounded temporarily for navigation issues. That day, he wasn't using his assigned aircraft, so his unfamiliarity with the instruments could have contributed. If Taylor truly believed he was over the Keys, he would have directed the flight northeast, directly into the open Atlantic, away from safety. The weather also worsened during the flight. Squalls and low visibility likely compounded the crew's disorientation. With no reliable compass, no visual references, and radio issues, the pilots were effectively flying blind. Eventually, they ran out of fuel and were forced to ditch their aircraft in the ocean, probably hundreds of kilometers off course. Why weren't the wrecks recovered? Consider the vastness of the Atlantic and the nature of the plains. TBM Avengers were not designed to float. Crashing into rough seas would have sunk them quickly. The area in question is part of the Blake Plateau, where the ocean floor drops rapidly to depths of over 1,000 meters. Even today, locating such wreckage would be incredibly difficult. As for the rescue plane, the PBM Mariner had a reputation for being a flying gas tank. It's widely believed that it exploded mid-air due to a vapor leak igniting, a tragic but not mysterious event. In fact, the explosion was witnessed and logged by the SS Gaines Mills, a ship in the vicinity. So what we're left with is not an unsolvable enigma, but a sequence of tragic errors, navigational confusion, worsening weather, communication breakdown, and mechanical vulnerabilities. All human and technical factors, all within the realm of explanation. Yet the myth of Flight 19 persists. Why? Because it fits perfectly into the romanticized lore of the Bermuda Triangle. A group of experienced pilots flying in formation, disappearing without a trace. It evokes fear and awe. But in reality, the most astonishing part may not be the mystery. It's how easily explainable the incident becomes when we apply rigorous investigation and remove the veil of myth. Dissecting Flight 19 also reveals how our perception of unexplained events is shaped. Popular books like Charles Berlitz's The Bermuda Triangle in the 1970s played a huge role in popularizing the mystery, often omitting critical details or distorting facts. Berlitz claimed, for instance, that the planes had full radio contact and were flying in clear skies when they disappeared. Both false. He also exaggerated the frequency of disappearances in the triangle, ignoring the fact that similar numbers of incidents occur in other heavily trafficked ocean regions. What we see then is a classic example of how real-world tragedies are transformed into supernatural lore. Through selective storytelling and repetition, a relatively mundane aviation accident becomes a legendary mystery. It's a cautionary tale, not about dangerous waters, but about how easily narratives can override evidence. The real lesson of Flight 19 isn't about vanishing into thin air. It's about the dangers of poor navigation, the challenges of flying over open ocean, and the seductive power of myth-making. In short, it's a human story, one of error, misjudgment and tragedy, not of portals or magnetic vortexes. Still, that doesn't stop us from wondering, does it? And that's the grip of the Bermuda Triangle. It lives in the gap between fact and fiction, pulling us in with every lost ship and plane, long after the science has spoken. The fourth mystery surrounding the Bermuda Triangle centers on the idea that it's a portal to another dimension, an area where the laws of physics break down, and where time and space can warp or even collapse. Over the decades, countless stories have surfaced suggesting that ships and planes entering the triangle vanish not because of storms or human error, but because they somehow cross into another realm. But is there any truth to this theory? And if not, why do so many believe it? The roots of this myth go back to one of the earliest and most famous disappearances, Flight 19. In December 1945, 5 US Navy bombers went missing during a routine training flight. A rescue plane sent after them also vanished. The last transmission from the flight leader reported strange compass readings and total disorientation. These bizarre final words, combined with the loss of multiple aircraft, created the perfect fuel for sensational theories. Some began to claim that the planes had been swallowed by a dimensional rift. Over time, this idea evolved into a full-blown narrative that the Bermuda Triangle contains a vortex, a gateway to another world, or a tear in the space-time continuum. Paranormal authors and documentaries have added layers of mystery, claiming time travel, teleportation, and even alien involvement. The notion is enticing. Imagine an invisible door to another universe sitting quietly in the middle of the ocean, pulling in ships and planes without warning. But how much of this is supported by science? To begin with, let's clarify. There is no physical evidence of a vortex or portal in the Bermuda Triangle. No scientific instruments have detected anomalies in gravity, magnetism, or space-time in the area. If there were a rift or portal, it would likely produce measurable effects, distortions in GPS, unusual electromagnetic fields, or sudden changes in time perception. Yet, commercial and military aircraft fly over the region daily with no such issues. Ships cross the area without incident. If the triangle were truly a dimensional gateway, its effects would be consistent and observable, not selective or random. What about the idea of time slips or warping? Some stories tell of ships sailing through a fog only to emerge hours or even days later with no explanation. In one account, a pilot named Bruce Gernon claimed that he flew through an electronic fog and landed in Miami 30 minutes ahead of schedule with strange distortions on his radar. He believes he traveled through a time tunnel created by unknown forces. However, aviation experts point out that Gernon's flight time and path are consistent with natural explanations. Tailwinds, faulty instruments, and misremembered timestamps can all lead to perceptions of lost or gained time. Moreover, most alleged cases of time anomalies in the Bermuda Triangle lack proper documentation. They often rely on anecdotal evidence or second-hand reports. Science demands repeatability, verification, and data. Without those, these stories remain intriguing but unproven. The lack of rigorous investigation into these claims makes it difficult to distinguish fact from fabrication. It's also important to recognize the human tendency to explain the unknown with the extraordinary. When people disappear without a clear reason, our brains reach for something dramatic. A rift in space-time. That's more compelling than mechanical failure or poor weather. But the reality is that complex systems, like airplanes and ocean vessels, sometimes fail. And when they do, especially in remote areas with challenging conditions, recovery can be difficult or impossible. From a physics standpoint, creating a portal to another dimension would require unimaginable energy. We're talking about levels of energy far beyond anything produced on Earth, possibly even approaching the scale of black holes or the Big Bang. Theoretical constructs like wormholes or extra-dimensional shortcuts are mathematically possible in Einstein's equations, but to stabilize and use one, you'd need exotic matter and negative energy, which have never been observed in the real world. The idea of a naturally occurring portal in the ocean left unexplained is simply not supported by any known scientific model. And yet the myth endures. It's become part of our cultural consciousness, showing up in movies, books, and games. The Bermuda Triangle, as a place of mysterious disappearances, taps into our fascination with the unknown. It offers a narrative that's both frightening and exciting, a hidden doorway in plain sight. It allows us to imagine that there's still magic in the world, that science doesn't yet have all the answers. Psychologists suggest that belief in such mysteries is driven by cognitive biases. One of them is the availability heuristic. We remember vivid, unusual stories more than mundane explanations. Another is the confirmation bias. We notice information that supports our beliefs and ignore what contradicts them. So when a ship vanishes mysteriously, we link it to the triangle. But when thousands of others cross the same waters safely, we dismiss those as unremarkable. In the end, the idea of a dimensional rift in the Bermuda Triangle is a modern myth, a compelling story built on coincidence, misinformation, and our longing for wonder. There is no credible scientific evidence to support it, but that doesn't mean it's worthless. Myths often reveal deeper truths, not about the world, but about ourselves. They show how we grapple with fear, loss, and the limits of our knowledge. They reflect our desire to believe in something more than the ordinary. So the fourth mystery, the idea of a portal to another dimension, remains just that, a mystery of the imagination. It may never be proven or disproven because it belongs not to the realm of physics, but to the stories we tell when the ocean swallows something we can't explain. Now, let's examine one of the most persistent and sensational claims about the Bermuda Triangle: the existence of a time vortex or a dimensional portal. This idea stretches far beyond planes vanishing or compasses spinning. According to this theory, the Bermuda Triangle may be a rift in the fabric of space-time itself, capable of warping time, transporting objects into other dimensions, or even sending people into the past or future. At first glance, it sounds like science fiction, but to some, it's a compelling explanation for the seemingly impossible disappearances reported in the region. Stories of time distortions in the Bermuda Triangle often include pilots or sailors who report strange lapses in time. One of the most famous examples comes from pilot Bruce Gernon. In 1970, he was flying from the Bahamas to Florida when he encountered a strange cloud-like tunnel. As he passed through it, he claims that time seemed to warp. His instruments malfunctioned, and when he emerged, he was 100 miles closer to Miami than he should have been. His entire trip, which should have taken 75 minutes, was completed in about 47. Gernon insists that this was not a miscalculation, but a genuine time anomaly, something he later described as an electronic fog that enveloped his aircraft. Other accounts describe similar anomalies: clocks moving out of sync, navigation instruments going haywire, and even visual distortions. These stories fuel the belief that there may be something in the region that defies the known laws of physics. Some suggest that the Bermuda Triangle sits atop an interdimensional portal, a gateway that occasionally opens and closes. Others invoke ideas from quantum mechanics or Einstein's general relativity to suggest that gravity or magnetic fields in the area might somehow create wormholes or folds in space-time. But is there any real science to support this? Let's start with the idea of time warps. Time dilation is a real effect in physics, proven through Einstein's theory of relativity. It occurs when objects move at high speeds or are in strong gravitational fields, conditions found near black holes or during high-velocity space travel. But none of these conditions exist naturally in the Bermuda Triangle. There is no massive gravitational source or relativistic speed involved in typical aviation or maritime activity over the region. In short, the necessary ingredients for actual time travel are missing. Then there's the concept of wormholes, hypothetical tunnels through space and time predicted by Einstein's equations. In theory, a wormhole could allow for shortcuts through space or even time travel. However, such structures would require exotic matter with negative energy density to remain stable, something that has never been observed in nature. Wormholes remain an intriguing theoretical possibility, but there is no evidence they exist in the Bermuda Triangle or anywhere else in our observable universe. As for the idea of magnetic or gravitational anomalies, the data simply doesn't support it. The U.S. Geological Survey and NOAA have extensively mapped the Earth's magnetic field, and while there are slight variations across the planet, the Bermuda Triangle does not show unusual magnetic activity compared to other regions. The same goes for gravitational mapping. No strange fluctuations or distortions have been found. In fact, the magnetic anomaly, sometimes cited in old reports, where compasses point to true north instead of magnetic north, is not unique to the Bermuda Triangle and occurs in several other places around the globe without incident. So how do we explain cases like Bruce Gernon's? Psychologists and aviation experts point to a combination of factors: misperception, stress, fatigue, and the complex dynamics of flying over water with few visual landmarks. Pilots can easily become disoriented, especially in bad weather. In such conditions, the brain can fill in gaps in perception, leading to the sensation of time speeding up, slowing down, or even vanishing. Instrument error, human error, and confirmation bias also play a significant role. Once a person believes they've experienced something extraordinary, they may interpret normal events through that lens, amplifying the mystery. Additionally, the region's geography contributes to navigational challenges. The Bermuda Triangle sits at the crossroads of powerful Gulf Stream currents, unpredictable tropical storms, and rapidly changing weather conditions. These factors create turbulence, sudden fog, and shifting cloud formations that can confuse even experienced pilots and sailors. When something unusual happens in such a volatile environment, it's tempting to search for an extraordinary explanation. But the truth is usually grounded in physics, meteorology, and human psychology. To test claims of time warps or dimensional portals, we would need hard evidence, verifiable data, repeated experiments, and measurable anomalies. None of that exists. What we have instead are anecdotal stories, some compelling, others clearly embellished, but none that withstand rigorous scientific scrutiny. While they fuel imaginations and make for great storytelling, they fall short of proving that the Bermuda Triangle is a breach in the space-time continuum. Still, the idea persists because it taps into something deeper, our fear of the unknown and our fascination with bending reality. Time travel, alternate dimensions, hidden portals. These concepts challenge the limits of our understanding and invite us to imagine what might be possible beyond the veil of the ordinary. In that sense, the myth of the Bermuda Triangle isn't about the ocean. It's about the human mind. So, does a time vortex exist in the Bermuda Triangle? The evidence says no. But the myth will likely endure, not because it's true, but because it dares to ask, what if it was?